All right, as we continue our lessons on the first five presidents in the early Republic era, we are going to talk about our second president, John Adams, and how he became president. Before we start, remember what was one of the main pieces of advice that George Washington had given the American people was to not go through and have any type of political parties. Well, guess what we did? Political parties. So, our first couple of political parties that we have are going to be the Federalist and the Democratic Republicans. Now, the Democratic Republicans, these are going to be supported by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. They want a very limited national government and a strict interpretation of the Constitution. Only do what it says. Do not do anything extra. If we do anything extra, we're going to have any problems with it. And so it helps to limit the power of the government. They oppose the National Bank, which was what brought in all the taxes and helped pay down the debt because southern states were paying an extra amount versus the northern states. And it opposed tariffs or taxes on imported goods. And they wanted an agrarian society, which is a society based on farming. Now, the Federalists, on the other hand, they are going to be supported by Alexander Hamilton and John Adams. They want a very strong national government with a loose interpretation of the Constitution. They kind of wanted to go around everything and to be able to go through and get the information from the presidents or from the Constitution and do kind of what they wanted to do. They favored the National Bank, obviously, since Alexander Hamilton created it. And tariffs were beneficial there because they made more money because you tax anything that's imported. They wanted an industrial society based on manufacturing, shipping, and trading. So we had two very diverse ways of looking at how America should be run. Now, the first real election, because the first couple of elections were, hey, Washington's running, everybody votes for Washington. What we're going to have here is a Democratic Republican candidate, Thomas Jefferson, is going to run against the Federalist candidate, John Adams. The election is very closely contested, and Jefferson wins the South, Adams wins the North, and the northern states had a bigger population, and so Adams wins the Electoral College as well, 71 to 68. Due to how a crazy quirk in the Constitution kind of worked, for the first few presidents, the person that got the second most Electoral College votes, they turned around and became the vice president as well. And so John Adams became president, and then Thomas Jefferson served him as vice president. Now, under Adams' presidency, we had a few things. He wanted to keep neutral, like Washington has said. He tried to keep the same policies in line. However, the problem was that the problem was that the French and the British were going to war, and the French especially were capturing and impressing American sailors into their navy. That means that they were capturing them and forcing them into the navy. It's going to cause the XYZ affair, which the XYZ affair is where Adams sent 3 American representatives to France to negotiate the end of the impressment by the French. When the ambassadors arrived in France, they were greeted by 3 French representatives, known still today as X, Y, and Z, and they demanded Americans pay a bribe to meet with the French officials. Basically, they had to pay money to go meet with somebody else. Common practice in Europe, so they didn't see it as being a big deal, but America decided, no, we're not going to do that. They refused the bribe and chose to return to America. We almost declared war on France during this time. George Washington was even willing to come out of retirement to lead the army. Now, when this happened, John Adams kind of overcorrected a little bit. What he decided to do was to impose the Alien and Sedition Acts. Now, these are a pair of laws and a combination of laws where they go through there and they do different things. The Alien Act made it more difficult for all immigrants to become citizens, immigrants to vote, and very easy for all immigrants to be deported. Basically, we were going to make it very hard to do all the rights that you have as an American citizen, and we're going to make it very easy for us to go through and reject you. The Sedition Acts made it illegal for newspapers to write anything that was negative about the government. If you were found guilty of the crime, you could be fined or jailed, and if you were a foreign writer, you could be deported as well. So, due to these controversies, because they were very unpopular laws, John Adams lost his reelection bid, and so he only served as one term as president, and Thomas Jefferson will be our next president, who we'll talk about tomorrow.